Hello. If you're visiting for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This video features mostly true scary stories with the sound of gentle rain in the background. If you're looking for something to help with sleeplessness, anxiety, or stress, you're in the right place. If you enjoy the stories, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Thank you for being here. Now, let's begin. Welcome to my very spooky adventure about a group of tourists, just like you and me, who explore a strange island that hides many secrets. As you listen to this story, I want you to imagine how it would feel to find something thrilling and terrifying with every step. If you enjoy this tale, don't forget to subscribe and share where you're tuning in from in the comments below. But wait, there's more. I have something special just for you. If you're looking to shed some pounds without lifting a finger, even while you sleep, check out the amazing weight loss dietary supplement linked in the description below. Trust me, it's a game changer that can help you feel your best. Now, let's dive into a story that will make your heart race and keep you wondering what's going to happen next. The sun was shining bright as I stepped off the boat onto the sandy beach of a little island. The waves gently lapped at the shore, and palm trees swayed in the breeze, looking like they were dancing just for us. There were 5 of us in our group: me, Sarah, Tom, Lily, and Jake. We were all excited to explore this beautiful place. "Let's go see what's over there," I shouted, pointing to a path leading into the thick forest. The others cheered, and we wandered off, our laughter filling the air. As we walked, the trees got thicker, and the sounds of the ocean faded away. It felt like the island was wrapping us in its arms, cozy and warm. But every so often, I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow darting between the trees. When I turned to look, nothing was there. It was just my imagination, I reassured myself. We found a clearing where a big stone stood, covered in strange shapes and lines. "What do you think this is?" asked Sarah, brushing her fingers over the cold rock. Her face twisted into confusion. "I think it's just old carvings," I said, trying to sound brave, but a chill ran down my spine. The symbols looked eerily familiar, like something from a nightmare I couldn't remember. "Let's take a picture," Tom said, and we all huddled together, grinning. But when we checked the photo, the stone didn't look right. The pattern seemed to shimmer and change, swirling like smoke. We all exchanged worried glances. "Maybe we should head back," Lily suggested nervously. "This doesn't feel right." But before we could turn around, something strange happened. I felt a tug at my heart, like the island was pulling me deeper into its secret. Against my better judgment, I said, "Let's keep going just a little longer." We ventured further, following the path until we reached a dark cave. "I think we should explore in here," Jake exclaimed, his eyes shining with excitement. He rushed inside, and one by one, we hesitated but eventually followed. Inside, the air was damp and cool, sending shivers through my body. The cave was dark, with only a few flickering torches to guide us. The walls were wet and sticky, almost like the cave was breathing. I could hear the sound of dripping water echoing around us. Suddenly, I heard a soft whisper. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What did you say?" Lily replied, looking scared. Before I could answer, I turned to see Tom had vanished from our group. "Where's Tom?" I shouted. Fear danced in my heart as we called his name, but there was no answer. "He must have gone ahead," I said, trying to stay calm. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. As we moved through the cave, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a storm of voices. "He's not coming back," Sarah murmured, her eyes wide. "Let's go find him," I said. But then I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Jake, and his face was pale. "No," he said, shaking his head. "We shouldn't split up." Just then, I noticed more symbols carved into the walls. They glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows that danced around us. We stumbled backward, horrified, as the symbols seemed to twist and move, telling a story we couldn't understand. I could feel the darkness closing in, squeezing my heart. Suddenly, Lily screamed. "Look!" She pointed down the tunnel. There, barely visible in the dim light, was Tom standing completely still, facing the wall. "Tom!" I yelled, rushing toward him. But as I got closer, something felt off. He was not moving, and the way he stood made my skin crawl. "Why isn't he turning around?" I whispered, glancing back at the others. Their faces were masks of fear. Just as I reached Tom, I realized he wasn't there, only an empty spot where he had stood. I felt a wave of panic crash over me. "Tom!" I screamed again, adrenaline surging through my veins. As I turned back to my friends, I noticed that Sarah was gone too, disappeared into thin air. The air felt thick and heavy, like we were being watched by unseen eyes. Every moment seemed like an eternity, and I felt as if the cave was alive, breathing with us. My heart raced, and I could only think of one thing. We had to get out. "We need to leave now," I shouted, grabbing Jake and Lily's hands, pulling them back toward the entrance. We ran, not looking back, but the cave felt endless. And then, just as we thought we were almost there, the ground beneath me crumbled. I fell to my knees, gasping as a dark void opened up before us. I could see the glimmer of strange symbols swirling in the shadows below. "What is happening?" Lily cried out. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears as I looked around. Frightening whispers encircled us, and I realized we were trapped in a world not meant for people like us. Without thinking, I yelled, "We must believe and fight our way out." But even as I said it, a creeping dread filled me as I remembered the old saying about the island. Once you enter, you may never leave. I clutched my friend's hands, knowing that if we didn't escape soon, we might become part of the island's secret forever. I could feel the grip of panic tightening around us as we stumbled back. The whispers in the cave grew heavier, almost wrapping around us like a thick fog. Each word seemed to pull at my mind, urging us to turn back, to retreat into the shadows where Tom and Sarah had vanished. As we moved deeper into the cave, I could feel the cold air crawling over my skin, and my breath quickened with fear. Suddenly, the flickering torchlight revealed a narrow passageway to our left, a spot we hadn't noticed before. Shadows played tricks on us, making it seem like faces were forming inside the rock. I peeked down that dark corridor, and for a moment, I thought I saw Tom's face reflected back, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a silent scream. I shivered, and with a deep breath, I turned to Jake and Lily. "We have to check it out," I whispered, my voice trembling with uncertainty. "I don't know," Jake said, his face pale. "What if it's another trap?" But something inside me yearned to know what was happening to my friends. "We can't leave them. We have to keep searching," I urged, feeling a strange pull toward the darkness of that narrow passageway. We hesitantly stepped into the tunnel, the sound of our footfalls echoing ominously around us. As we went further in, the air grew thick and heavy. Every step felt like we were being drawn into the heart of the island, into its secret. The walls began to close in, and the whispers felt closer, more urgent. Then, out of nowhere, a chilling scream pierced the silence. It was sharp and echoed through the tunnel, making my heart drop. "Was that Sarah?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. In a rush of adrenaline, we ran toward the sound, desperate to find her. When we reached the end of the passage, we found ourselves in a vast cavern filled with the glitter of strange crystals. But the beauty quickly turned to horror as I realized what lay at our feet. Twisted roots and bones, tangled together in a gruesome sight. They were remnants of those who had come before us. The missing tourists, devoured by the island's secrets. I fought the urge to vomit, stepping back in horror. "Look," Lily pointed, her finger shaking. On a crystal pedestal at the center of the cavern, there was a small, tattered book. The cover was stained, and I could make out the words, "The Lost Souls." My heart raced as I moved closer, compelled by an unseen force. In this eerie light, I opened the book, revealing pages filled with names written in a spidery script. Each name was ominously crossed out, leaving only a series of fading words that told of despair and the disappearance of many who had wandered too far. Suddenly, the room began to quake, and the crystals shuddered. The whispers grew louder, roaring around us like a thunderstorm. In the chaos, I felt a cold hand grip my ankle. What was that? I cried, trying to shake it off, but I could see a shadow creeping out from behind one of the broken rocks. Jake and Lily screamed, their faces white with terror as they hurried back. "We have to go," screamed Jake, pulling at my arm. But the shadow now stood tall and dark, a figure that seemed to be made of smoke and memories. "You should not have come here," it hissed, its voice echoing in a way that made my skin crawl. With every ounce of courage I could muster, I yelled back, "We want to leave. Please let us go." But the figure only laughed softly, the sound chilling and filled with malice. It moved closer, its form distorting, revealing 1,000 faces twisted in agony. Fear washed over me, but deep inside, I remembered the fallen bones and the screaming faces. "We have to find Tom and Sarah," I shouted to my friends, but it was difficult to think clearly as the shadow closed in. "Where are you?" I yelled, hoping against hope for some sign, but the only response was the cold, bitter air that seemed to swallow my words. Jake pulled me backward as the figure reached out with slender, claw-like hands that flickered in and out of sight. It wanted us, and I could feel its hunger, a wanting that shouldn't belong in a living world. In a panic, we turned and sprinted back down the passageway. But as we ran, the whispers morphed into laughter, taunting us. "You can't escape. You are part of us now," the voices echoed, swirling around like a dark storm. My heart raced faster, matching the pounding in my ears as I raced blindly, my mind filled with visions of what might happen if we failed to find our friends. As we rounded a corner, we stumbled into another dark section of the cave, and instead of an exit, we found ourselves in a narrow room with walls so close I could feel the pressure pushing against my arms. Panic rose as we looked for a way out, but the laughter echoed all around, drowning out our own voices. I could feel myself starting to hyperventilate, the weight of despair pressing down on me. Suddenly, I spotted a flicker of light ahead. Was it the cave's exit? I pushed past Jake, and Lily went straight toward it, feeling the air shift with each step. The light pulsed and beckoned like a heartbeat, erupting with hope. But as I reached the light, it flickered and vanished. I stumbled forward into darkness, landing hard on the cold, rocky ground. "Help!" I shouted, struggling to my feet. But despair quickly wrapped around me again as I realized I was alone. Panic surged within me as I called out for Jake and Lily, but the cave swallowed my words. The darkness felt heavy and thick, and I could almost sense it closing in, wrapping around my throat like a dark vine. Breathing heavily, I moved forward, hoping to find a passage back to where I had left them. My foot hit something soft and squishy, and I recoiled. I had stepped on something wet and warm. I glanced down, my heart plummeting as I saw the deep red streaks on the ground. It looked like blood. "Go away!" I shouted into the dark, but my voice sounded feeble, swallowed up by the cave. Suddenly, the ground rumbled beneath me, and the air vibrated with an unnatural energy. I stumbled backward, nearly falling, when I felt something brush against my face. A ghostly presence, a whisper of air that chilled me to the bone. I backed away, dread building in my chest, when all of a sudden I heard it again. Tom's voice, echoing faintly, like a memory carried on the wind. "Help me!" I sprinted down the dark corridor, following the sound, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. "Tom!" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning. I felt lost, consumed by the darkness, but the faint echo of his voice kept me moving. "Stay away from here," he called, his voice soft and weak. "You don't know what this place can do." I hesitated, torn between the sound of my friend needing help and the lingering fear that surrounded me. I pressed on, calling out his name, praying that I could reach him, but the whispers returned, swirling in my mind, creating a dissonance that almost drowned out everything else. Turn back, they hissed, clawing into my ears. "It's too late for him. It's too late for you." "Tom!" I yelled one more time, But my voice was just another drop in the ocean of silence that surrounded me. The eerie cave fell quiet, and the laughter returned, now sounding like it was coming from all directions. I felt their cold breath against my skin mocking me. I could sense the eyes of the shadowy figure pinning me down, aching to drag me into the darkness forever. And yet, I couldn't give up. I had to push through, driven by the need to find Tom, to escape this nightmare before it closed in on us completely. With every inch forward, I faced the truth that once I stepped foot on this island, the threads of fate had already begun to weave our destinies into something terrible. What would happen if I didn't find a way out? What if I became just another name on that forsaken list? An uneasy thought crawled its way into my mind. If I didn't act quickly, I might not see the light again. I mustered the last ounce of strength I had, ready to fight the shadows that threatened to consume me. I took a deep breath, using the last of my courage, determined to find my way back to Tom and Lily before we all became part of the island's wicked secret, lost to the dark forever. And in that moment, just as I was about to turn a corner, I caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. A shadow darted past me, something familiar, something that sent a chill through my bones. Had I finally found an exit? Or was it another trick of the dark, leading me deeper into the island's twisted heart? I hesitated, caught in the balance between hope and fear. The whispers rose again, growing louder, more frantic, as if the shadows sensed my hesitation. They wanted my doubt, my fear, to fold into their trap and lose my way completely. But there was no turning back now. I needed to push onward and face whatever horrors lay ahead, hoping for the chance to save my friends and maybe, just maybe, find a way out of this nightmare. I could feel my heart pounding as I slowly turned toward the movement I had seen. The shadows in the cave swirled, dancing with an eerie grace, making it hard to tell where the darkness ended and the light began. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the flicker of something, or someone, was all I could focus on. As I took a cautious step forward, the ground beneath me shifted. The stones felt slippery and slick, as if they were coated in something warm and lifelike. Just then, the figure emerged from the shadows, and I gasped. It was Tom, but he looked different. His eyes were wide with terror, but there was something else, something vacant and hollow. "Tom!" I cried, relief flooding through me. "I thought we lost you." But he didn't respond the way I expected. Instead, he just stood there, staring into the darkness with a sort of haunted look, as if he was seeing things I couldn't. I reached out, trying to pull him back, but he didn't move. "Tom, come on. We need to get out of here," I urged, my voice cracking with desperation. Then, with a strange calmness, Tom slowly turned his head, the darkness in his eyes seeming to pull me in. "You don't understand. This place, it knows us. It won't let us go." His voice was empty, echoing in the damp, cold air. At that moment, the chilling reality of his words struck me like a physical blow. The walls seemed to breathe around us, in and out, a living entity feeding on our fear and despair. The laughter of the shadows grew louder, sending a shiver down my spine. I glanced around, feeling the walls closing in, the air thickening with each passing second. "Tom, we have to fight it," I insisted, shaking him slightly. But it was like trying to wake someone from a deep sleep. He blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream, and for a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Suddenly, a harsh whisper echoed through the cave. "You cannot save him. He is ours now." The voice slithered through my mind like a serpent, and I realized with a start that the shadows were creeping closer, forming grotesque shapes that twisted and turned, circling around us like predator and prey. "Stay back!" I shouted, stepping protectively in front of Tom. But deep down, I felt the power of the darkness, wrapping around my heart like a vice, squeezing tighter, as if it was searching for a way in. Just then, I noticed the corner of my vision flicker again. Lily. She was crouching in the shadows, tears streaming down her cheeks, eyes wide with fear. "Help," she sobbed, her voice barely above a whisper, as a figure loomed behind her. I wanted to reach out to her, but I felt paralyzed. The shadows were alive, and they were hungry. In a split-second decision, I yelled out to her, "Lily, run! Get out of here!" My voice pierced through the madness for a moment, but the shadows only laughed, a low, dreadful sound that echoed in the cavern like a funeral dirge. Then I noticed something shifting behind Lily, something dark and towering. It was the figure that had haunted me before, now clearer than ever. It moved with grace, like a storm cloud coiling around her, threatening to snuff out her light. I felt the ground trembling as it drew closer, and I could feel my breath quicken. "Lily, please," I called, forcing myself to move forward, but the shadows grabbed at my feet, sticky and heavy, pulling me back. The air became thick with dread, and behind me, I could hear Tom whispering words I couldn't understand, words that seemed to twist through the air like smoke. Lily seemed frozen in time, her gaze fixed on the approaching darkness, and desperation surged inside me. "You have to fight it. We can't let it take you too." With all my strength, I lunged forward, breaking free from the grip of the shadows, just enough to reach for her. I felt the heat of the darkness pressing against my back, but I couldn't lose another friend. Not like this. Not to this haunted island. If this was my last chance, I had to make it count. Suddenly, the chamber shuddered violently, dust and rubble falling from the walls. The light flickered out, leaving us in pitch blackness. I grasped for Lily's hand blindly, the room spinning as fear engulfed me. Just then, I felt her fingers brush against mine, and I pulled her with me as we stumbled backward. But as we retreated, the shadows roared. "You think you can escape?" they taunted, their voices rising like a chilling wind. "This island feeds on fear. You will never leave." I turned and ran, dragging Lily behind me, heart racing as I glanced back. Tom's form began to dissolve into shadow, his screams silenced by the cruel laughter of the cave. "Tom, no!" I shouted, the panic clawing at my insides. But there was nothing I could do. He was slipping away, lost in the darkness forever. We raced down the narrow tunnel, the oppressive air thick and damp, voices of the past echoing at our heels. I feared that if I looked back, if I hesitated even for a second, I might find myself trapped in the shadows, like so many before me. "Keep running," I urged Lily, my voice a breathless whisper. "We have to find a way out." The darkness felt alive, swirling around us, filling the air with a stench of decay. I could feel my legs aching, bruised from the rough ground, yet I pushed myself harder, the thought of being caught urging me on. As we stumbled into another room, our breath fogging the chilling air, I spotted a flicker of light in the distance, a small glimmer, barely visible through the oppressive gloom. "There," I pointed, hope igniting inside me like a fragile flame. But as we approached, the cave began to shake again, and I watched in horror as the walls started to twist and morph, blocking our path. The laughter arose once more, this time louder, more menacing, wrapping around us like a noose tightening with every moment, urging us toward despair. "Stay close," I shouted, grabbing Lily's hand tightly as I scanned for another route. The shadows were quick, darting across the ground, whispering to us, weaving a net of dread around our minds. I felt doubts creeping in. What if we never found a way out? What if we joined Tom in the void? Where do we go now? Lily gasped, her eyes wide, water pooling in her gaze. "We can't stay here." There was a sudden gust of wind that pulled at my clothes, driving me toward the flickering light. "This way!" I yelled, and we plunged forward, pushing against the swirling shadows that clawed at our heels. With the light growing brighter, I sensed that we were pushing against the very essence of the cave, battling it with every ounce of strength we had left. "Hold on, we can make it," I promised, though the knot of fear in my gut felt tighter. Just then, the darkness erupted, merging into the ceiling, revealing more of the twisted cavern decorated with shadows and broken memories, tales of lost souls who had paved the path before us. I stood frozen for a moment, taking in the gruesome honesty of it all. Overhead, the rocks glistened like eyes, watching our every move, and I felt the weight of their judgment pressing in on me. "Look out!" Lily screamed, pointing to a figure emerging from the darkness ahead. It wasn't human anymore. Its shape twisted and elongated, a monstrous form devoid of features that sent chills down my spine. That's when I realized it was made from the lost souls, fragments of those who came before us, trapped in a cycle of despair, weaving into the blackness. I turned to run, my only hope being the light that flickered at the end of the tunnel. But every time I moved, it seemed to shift further away, an elusive dream beyond my reach. "Keep going," I yelled to Lily, but the air felt heavy, thickening around us, trying to suffocate the fight within. With every step, I felt the pressure of hopelessness weigh me down, as if the cave itself was urging me to yield. But surrender wasn't an option. I refused to let the darkness win. Not over me, not over my friends. I sprinted forward, dragging Lily with me as the lurking figure began to take form, long fingers stretching out hungrily, desperate to grasp at our fading hope. Just a few more steps. I could see the opening ahead. My heart raced wildly as determination surged through me, battling the shadows surrounding us. And then it happened. The grotesque figure lunged forward, a darkness so thick it swallowed the remaining light. "You will be ours," it howled, and I felt its icy grip grab my shoulder. With a primal scream, I twisted away, wrenching free as the darkness clawed desperately, trying to pull me back into the depths of despair. I stumbled, tugging Lily with me, forcing us forward into the fading light. "Don't look back," I shouted, and we burst into the open air, blinded by sunlight that streamed down like a promise of safety. But as I turned to see where we had come from, a hissing voice echoed, tearing through the air. "You can't escape us. We'll wait for you." My heart raced as we sprinted away from the mouth of the cave, the ominous laughter still ringing in my ears. We didn't stop until we were far from that cursed place, our lungs burning, our bodies trembling. As I collapsed onto the sand, covering my eyes from the blazing sun, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching us from within the trees, whispering our names, waiting for another chance to pull us back into their depths. I took a shaky breath, glancing at Lily. Her eyes mirrored my own fear, and we both knew this wasn't over. We had escaped for now, but something told me the island was never going to let us go completely. The darkness would find a way to reach us, to drag us back into the horror we had narrowly escaped, and I had to be ready for the inevitable return. I lay there on the warm sand, gasping for air, feeling the sun hit my face as a strange comfort in the wake of that nightmare. But even as I tried to catch my breath, my mind was racing, desperate to push away the vision of the creature that had almost pulled me back into that darkness. The laughter lingering in my ears made my skin crawl, and I glanced around, half expecting to see shadows creeping from the trees, ready to snatch us away again. "Are we safe?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling, pulling me back into the horror we just escaped. I looked at her, and the defeat in her eyes matched my own fear. I wanted to reassure her, to tell her it was over, but deep down I felt that the worst was far from finished. "I don't know," I replied, my voice barely more than a croak. I struggled to my feet, searching the tree-line that loomed at the edge of the beach. The trees appeared more sinister now, their dark branches twisting into unnatural shapes. It was like they were beckoning us to return, whispering secrets meant only for those drawn to their embrace. Taking a step back from the water's edge, I scanned the horizon. The ocean waves crashed heavily, angry and relentless, churning like a storm brewing below its surface. I could feel the energy of the island pulsing just under my skin, a vibration of dread and dark promises, as if it was alive and knew we were here. "Maybe we should get help," Lily suggested, her tone shaky. There has to be a way to signal someone. But even as she spoke, a chilling thought crept in. What help would come? Would anyone believe our story? And what if the darkness followed us? My mind flashed back to Tom, to the torment I witnessed in the depths of that cave. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my rising panic at bay. "Let's find the others," I said, forcing optimism into my voice. "They might be close by." We began walking along the beach, staying close to the water where the sand was hard, I kept glancing back toward the forest, half expecting to see someone lurking at the edge, watching us with those eerie eyes. The closer we got to the tree line, the less calming the bright sun felt, and soon the shadows gathered on the ground, stretching like fingers reaching for us. Lily looked nervous, and I could see she was scanning the area too. Do you think Tom and the others made it out?" she asked hesitantly. I wished I could say yes, but the doubt lodged like a weight in my chest. "We have to believe they did," I replied, though somewhere deep down I could already sense the truth tearing at the edges of my mind. As we walked, the wind picked up, swirling the sand around our feet, cold and biting. I hugged myself tight, feeling the sudden chill sneak in. The sunlight had dulled, clouds gathering ominously above us. "Do you hear that?" Lily said, her gaze snapping to the forest again. I strained to listen, a sense of dread creeping back in. It was a low murmur, like faraway whispers caught in the treetops. My heart raced anew, pounding like a drum. "What is that?" I asked, hardly able to force the words out. It sounds like voices," she whispered, pressing her palms against her ears as if trying to block them out. I felt frozen in place, unable to turn away. As we stepped closer to the trees, the shadows deepened, warping and twisting as if trying to swallow us whole. Each step brought the whispers into sharper focus, a chorus of soft, chilling words that seemed to ebb and flow with the wind. "Help us, you should have stayed, join us," the voices crooned, and I couldn't tell if it was a warning or a lure. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but something compelled me forward. Maybe it was the thought of Tom and the others trapped, perhaps begging for help too. "We can't stop," I urged. "We have to find them." As I moved closer, the branches above crackled as shadows darted just out of sight, chills racing down my spine. I felt the vibrations growing stronger, tangling with the voices. Lily hesitated, catching hold of my arm, but I couldn't waver now. Suddenly, something flashed through the trees, a pale figure that moved too quickly for me to process. "Did you see that?" I asked, my pulse skyrocketing. "Yes," Lily whimpered, moving closer to me, her wide eyes shimmering with fear. "What was it?" "Stay close," I said, my voice tense. The shoreline vanished behind us as we stepped deeper into the darkness. Every snap of a twig made me jump. The trees towered over us, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, threatening to snatch us away. "Tom, Sarah, Jake," I called, but my voice felt small and fragile, swallowed by the shadows. The whispers intensified, morphing into a cacophony, drowning out my calls. "Join us," they insisted, wrapping around my mind, feeding off my doubt. Just when I thought I heard a response, the whispers faded back into the wind, leaving only an unnerving silence. I squeezed Lily's hand tightly, and together we moved further into the forest, seeking any sign of our friends. With each step, the darkness pressed in, heavier and colder, until I felt like I could almost touch it. Then I saw it, a flicker of white between the trees. "Look," I exclaimed, pointing towards it. But as soon as my eyes locked onto the figure, it faded entirely, replaced by nothing but the twisting branches. It was right there. I yelled, my frustration boiling over. "Maybe it was just a trick," Lily gasped. Fear glazed over her face, but I couldn't shake the feeling, the insistence that something waited just beyond my sight. It was taunting us, drawing us into its grasp, and I knew, whatever that was, it might be our only chance to find Tom, Sarah, and Jake. "Let's keep moving," I urged, adrenaline surging through me. "We can't lose our chance." We pressed on, each breath feeling more labored, and the air thickened around us, as if laden with the weight of lost souls. Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to rumble, a low growl that echoed through the trees, sending birds flying away into the sky. "What's happening?" Lily shrieked, but I was already scanning the area, my instinct screaming that something was about to happen. Before I could answer, the ground split open ahead of us. An ominous pit formed, roots curling like claws climbing upward, pulling life into the depths below. I felt myself stagger back, stumbling against Lily. as darkness erupted from the hole, swirling into a thick fog that engulfed us both. "Run!" I shouted, but the sinister fog wrapped around us, heavy and suffocating. The whispers rose to a deafening roar, tangling with my thoughts, trying to invade my mind. I pulled Lily away, and we sprinted in the opposite direction, the fog clawing at our heels. It felt like we were being hunted, and I could sense something lurking just out of reach, something powerful and ancient that wanted us. "Over here!" I cried, spotting an opening in the trees that led deeper into the grove. I could only hope it would take us closer to our friends, away from the malevolent grip of the shadows. Bursting into the clearing, the fog slowed behind us, but didn't vanish. A strange silence fell, an overwhelming weight settling upon me, as if the forest held its breath. Then, through the stillness, I heard it, a faint whimper, more like a plea for help. "Did you hear that?" I asked, turning to Lily, who nodded urgently, eyes wide and fearful. Without waiting for a response, I followed the sound, drawn toward it like a moth to a flame. As we approached, a figure slowly came into view, pale and trembling. It sat against a tree. My heart raced as I recognized it. "Tom!" I shouted, racing forward, relief washing over me. But as I reached for him, he looked up, horror etched onto his face, as if he had seen something unimaginable. "No, don't!" he yelled, scrambling backward, fear radiating from him like an electric charge. "Why?" I asked, confusion flooding my mind. "We thought we lost you." His breaths came out in quick gasps, shivering whispers breaking through the suffocating silence that surrounded us. "It's not safe, you don't understand." Before I could process his warning, the fog started to crawl toward us, thick and hungry, wrapping around the trees, bubbling as if it were alive. I felt dread grip my insides once more, a force that told me the worst was still ahead. What was waiting for us in the fog? I felt the weight of our choices pressing down like the shadows closing around us once again, and I knew that we had to be ready for whatever lurked inside. This wasn't over yet. "Don't! You can't go any closer!" Tom shouted, his voice raw with fear. He tugged at my arm, and I felt a surge of confusion. The fog curled menacingly around us, thickening like a living thing, creeping closer as if to snatch away the last remnants of hope in this cursed place. "What do you mean?" I asked, glancing back at the swirling darkness behind us. It felt like it was watching us, waiting for the right moment to spring. "We thought you were lost." He gasped, his eyes wide and frantic, struggling to catch his breath as he looked at me, full of fear. "I saw things in there, horrible things. Whatever is in the fog, it wants you." Lily stepped back, clearly terrified by Tom's words, but I refused to be paralyzed by fear. "We can't just leave you here," I insisted, pulling away from him. "We're all in this together." "No!" he shouted, shaking his head vigorously. "You don't understand. It's a trap. It takes you in, makes you see things you wish you never saw. We have to get out of here, now." The air grew colder around us as the fog inched closer, and I could feel a chill seeping deep into my bones. I felt the hairs on my neck stand on end as whispers slithered through the air, teasing at the edges of my consciousness. Join us, Tom. Please tell us what you saw." I pressed, trying to make sense of the chaos swirling around us. My heart raced, knowing that the shadows were inching closer, drawn to the flicker of desperation in our hearts. He shuddered, a deep breath hitching in his throat. "The shadows, they show you everything you're afraid of. They turn your worst nightmares into reality." I saw Sarah. She was lost, calling for us. But when I tried to reach her, she just vanished into the darkness. His voice cracked, and I could see the terror etched across his face. "I don't care what it shows," I yelled, feeling my resolve harden. "We need to go find her. We can't leave her alone in that cave." But even as I spoke, the fog swirled, a mass of shadowy figures materializing just beyond our view. I felt as if the island itself was alive, feeding off our fear, enticing us to step into the haze and lose ourselves forever. It tugged at my mind, putting images there that I couldn't shake. Memories twisted and mangled by the darkness. "Listen," Lily cried, her voice breaking through the mounting dread. "We have to stick together. If we fight it as one, maybe we can beat it." Tom looked between us, the struggle visible in his eyes. But what if it takes you two? I can't stand that possibility." "Trust us," I said firmly, stepping forward, determined not to let fear tighten its grip on our fate. "We have to try." Just then, the ground shook again, and the shadows surged forward, grasping at us with long, shifting tendrils, pulling us in. Panic ignited in my chest as I felt it wrapping around my ankles, dragging me backward. "Run! Now!" I yelled, yanking us both with me. We barreled deeper into the clearing, where the grip of the fog seemed weaker, the murmurs fading just slightly. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, thrumming with the adrenaline of survival. Ahead loomed a gnarled tree, its branches bent and twisted, reaching out as if wanting to draw us closer. "Head for the tree!" I shouted, and with all our strength, we sprinted for it. As the fog lunged toward us, I could hear the creepy laughter echoing through the trees once more, wrapping around us with venomous joy. "You can't escape, you're ours now." I pushed harder, almost stumbling as I leaped toward the tree's trunk. The bark was rough and uneven beneath my fingertips, but it felt solid. With one last effort, we all crashed against it, digging our hands into the grooved bark, panting and gasping. "What now?" Lily asked breathlessly, glancing back into the darkness that loomed just beyond the tree, the sinister mist curling around its base. "We need to find a way to fight back," I replied, trying to push aside the paralyzing fear trying to envelop me. I could still hear whispers, the dark promises of the fog enticing me with visions of my past failures, memories I thought were long buried. I fought hard to ignore them, pushing through the darkness pressing in around me, the panic fluttering like a bird trapped in a cage. "There's got to be something here," Tom murmured, scanning the area for anything we could use. His voice trembled slightly, betraying his fear. "Something to fight it." Suddenly, I noticed symbols carved into the old tree, unearthly and twisted. They seemed to move, shifting in the shadows like they were alive. "Look," I pointed, drawing their attention to the carvings. "Maybe this is something important." We all moved closer, examining the symbols, a mix of horror and fascination washing over us. They seemed to pulse with energy, and the closer we got, the stronger the whispers became, noise lacing around my mind like threads trying to sew it shut. "Stay focused," I whispered, shaking my head violently as the whispers twisted into my thoughts again. "We can break this, whatever it is." Tom reached out, touching one of the symbols with a shaky hand. The moment his fingers brushed the aged bark, the ground shook violently once more. The whispers turned into screams, raw and haunting, echoing off the trees. "You cannot break the bond. You cannot escape." I pressed my hands against the tree, the energy coursing through me, filling the hollow space with a low hum. I felt connected to something ancient, something powerful that had once existed here, long before the shadows arrived. Tom and Lily followed my lead, their hands finding the rough textures of the tree as a surge of determination ran through us. "We need to channel our fear," I urged, my voice steady despite the chaos. "Let it flow through us. We have to fight back." Terror swept through the air, the fog buzzing with rage as it rallied around us, rising up and pressing in, malicious and hungry. As I focused, I began to imagine a light, a brilliant, piercing light that would slice through the darkness. "Think of what we love," I shouted, trying to rally our spirits. "We can use it as a weapon." Suddenly, I felt the power shift, a wave of light sparking within me, and I pictured our friends, the laughter we shared, the moments that held us together against all odds. The darkness churned wildly, shadows shrieking and thrashing as if they were battling something they could not comprehend. "You think love can conquer us? You are mistaken," they howled, their voices twisted with menace. But I refused to surrender. The energy pulsed through our hands, radiating outward. And then it happened. A crack appeared in the fog. light breaking through like the dawn after endless night. I felt the warmth wash over us as the fog recoiled, hissing in rage. "Keep pushing," Lily shouted, her voice echoing with determination. Just then, the ground beneath us shattered, splitting open and revealing the depths of the void below. Darkness swirling like a vicious tempest. I saw faces in the dark, phantom figures reaching out, their mouths stretching in silent screams, hungry for escape. I felt their agony seeping into my heart, and the memories of our friends dragged me closer to the edge. "Hold on," I yelled, grasping the trunk tighter, feeling the light begin to wane. But I refused to let it go. I focused on the energy that surged through me, feeding off every moment that mattered. The shadows screamed in fury as the bright light grew stronger, illuminating the tremors of the ground around us. Finally, with an explosion of power that sent tremors through the air, the light erupted from our hands, expanding outward. The overwhelming brightness pushed back the darkness, revealing the twisted forms of the shadows shrieking in pain as they were obliterated, vaporizing into nothingness. But even as one wave of darkness fell, I felt another lurking in the corners of my mind, as if it was only waiting to strike again. A chill swept through me, and I knew with an unsettling certainty that this battle was not over. "Let's go," I called, urging Tom and Lily to follow as I took a step back from the tree, feeling dizzy from the burst of energy. The thick fog was receding, but I knew it would return. I could feel its tendrils lingering on the edges of our consciousness, waiting for the right moment to strike again. We needed a plan, a way to outsmart the darkness before it enveloped us once more. "Let's regroup and keep moving," I urged, scrambling forward, determination roaring within me, ready to face whatever waited in the shadows ahead. As we ventured deeper into the forest, weaving through the remnants of fog that licked at our heels, my heart pounded with an unsettling anticipation. What lay in store for us? Whatever it was would not stop hunting until it had claimed us all. We hurried down a narrow path, hearts racing in unison, the forest closing in around us like a vice. The pale light struggled to penetrate the thick canopy above, making shadows dance and shift like phantoms. I glanced back, half expecting the fog to follow us, tendrils reaching out like searching hands, but nothing appeared. "I can't believe we made it out of that," Lily said, a tremor in her voice. Her face was pale, eyes wide with lingering fear. Yet even as she spoke, the oppressive atmosphere pressed against us, and I felt the unease settle like a weight on my chest. The eerie whispers from before echoed faintly in my mind, teasing at the edges of my sanity. "Stay alert," I warned, trying to sound braver than I felt. "We can't let our guard down. The darkness is still there." With each step, the trees loomed closer, their gnarled branches twisted into grotesque shapes, and I half expected them to reach out and grab us, pulling us back into the fog where despair dwelled. Then, through the twisted roots and underbrush, I caught sight of something glimmering, a faint light flickering in the distance like a dying star. Hope flickered in my chest. "Look over there," I pointed, my heart leaping. "Maybe it's something safe, or it could be another trap," Tom retorted, his voice low and wary. But he followed without hesitation, and Lily pressed on beside us. The light flickered again, almost dancing, taunting us to come closer. As we approached, I felt an unusual sense of familiarity wash over me. It was as if I had seen the glow before, buried deep within my memories. The glow pulsed, revealing a clearing at the center of the forest, a strange, serene space untouched by the darkness that surrounded us. "This feels odd," I said softly, stepping into the clearing. The ground was smooth and untouched, dotted with wildflowers swaying gently, as if inviting us to stay. I felt inexplicably drawn to the light, its warmth reaching out to us, creating solace amid chaos. But then the light dimmed, and the shadows stretched long around us, dark and thick. The air changed too, charged with something sinister. "This isn't right," I said sharply, the hair on my arms standing on end. "We shouldn't be here." Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the clearing, a sound that was more felt than heard, vibrating through the ground and into my bones. The peaceful air turned frigid, and instinct kicked in. I had to get out of there. Run! I shouted, adrenaline surging once more. We turned to dash back into the safety of the trees. But something shifted behind us. A figure draped in shadows emerged, its shape elongated and indistinct, gliding across the ground as if it had no solid form. I froze mid-step, my heart pounding like a war drum. Its eyes were hollow, two pits of darkness that seemed to suck in the remaining light, leaving an overwhelming void in their wake. "What is that?" Lily gasped, her voice trembling with terror. I don't know," I stuttered, the shadows reaching out towards us, flickering and dancing with malevolent joy. "We have to keep moving." The figure lunged, a sudden burst of speed unsettling the ground beneath us, and my mind raced with thoughts of escape. We dashed back into the trees, running blindly into the thick foliage that felt like a maze. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like snakes, drowning out my thoughts and engulfing me in their suffocating embrace. "Don't look back," Tom yelled, but I couldn't help it. I glanced over my shoulder, and in that fleeting moment, I saw it. Shadowy fingers stretching toward me, hunger etched in its features. It was so close that I could almost feel the chill emanate from it, a palpable force that sent a bolt of ice through my veins. "Keep running," I screamed, turning back to where we were heading, heart pounding in my chest. Each step felt heavy, the branches snapping ominously as we pushed through, desperate to escape. Suddenly, the forest shifted, trees morphing into grotesque shapes, branches twisting into claw-like hands that seemed to grasp at me. "This way," I shouted, veering toward a narrow path. But even as we ran, the dark figure pursued us. I could hear its growl echoing in the air, vibrating through my bones. The shadows whispered promises of despair, filling my mind with visions of failure and loss, drawing me back like a magnet. "Join us, become one of us." "No, you won't take me," I shouted defiantly even as fear gnawed at my heart. I dug my heels into the ground, pushing myself forward, though I could feel my strength waning. "Are we almost out?" Lily panted, panic spilling from her voice like a cascading waterfall. "I think so," I replied, desperately searching for any sign of hope, any hint of daylight outside these suffocating shadows. Just when I thought we'd found a way out, a strange howl echoed, piercing through the air. It sent a wave of ice and dread down my spine. My breath caught as more figures began to emerge, shadows spilling from between the trees, their forms shifting and twisting as if they were never meant to take shape. "Run! Don't stop!" I ordered, my legs screaming in protest as we pushed forward. The growls intensified, the chorus of fear swelling like a storm around us. Branches crackled underfoot, and I felt the ground give way slightly, creating a vortex of uncertainty, swirling, pulling back against us, making every step feel like a monumental task. I looked back, just in time, to see the growling figure slip between the gnarled trunks, eyes glowing with a faint, eerie light. "Faster!" Tom yelled, fear etched deep on his face. I could hear the howl again, chilling and haunting, a sound that echoed into my soul, stirring something primordial that tugged at the edges of my mind. Then suddenly, I saw it, a flicker of light breaking through the trees ahead. I pushed myself harder, launching towards the brightness, convinced it was our salvation, the way back to safety. As we sprinted for the light, I could feel another presence looming, something darker than the fog, something ancient and terrifying, latching onto my fears and casting shadows on my resolve. "Almost there," I shouted, nearing the edge of the trees, but the darkness surged behind us, claws snapping in a violent rage as we broke through into the clearing once more. We stumbled to a halt, gasping for breath, absorbing our surroundings. The light shone brilliantly, illuminating the ground like stars scattered across the night. But just as relief washed over me, I turned to find the shadows swirling about, coiling tighter and tighter, blocking our escape. "No, this can't be happening," I gasped, realizing we were still trapped, still in danger. The growling reverberated, louder this time, as if the darkness was feeding off our fear. I could feel it wrapping around my throat, squeezing tighter until I could hardly breathe. "You can't escape your fate," the shadows hissed, creeping closer with every passing second. "We have to fight back," Tom shouted, anger igniting in his eyes, as if he could pierce the darkness with sheer will. "Together, remember the light." I nodded, fueling the flicker of determination that still burned inside me. "Yes, think of the moments that gave us strength." We joined hands, channeling our energy, our belief in one another. The darkness wailed, recoiling at the surge of warmth that blossomed between us, and I could feel the light building, pushing back against the oppressive gloom. "Fight it!" Lily screamed, her voice rising with fervor. Focus flooded my mind as I pictured our safe places, our laughter, shared moments, the bright memories that kept us anchored in this storm of shadows. With a surge unlike anything I had felt before, the light erupted from our hands, illuminating the air around us, fierce and unwavering. The shadows shrieked in agony, twisting and writhing as they fought against the brightness. But with every ounce of our strength, we pushed forward, the shadows breaking apart, dissolving into the air like fog under the sun. Our hands burned with energy, and I could feel my heart racing, each beat pounding with the rhythm of hope. Suddenly, with an explosion of light, the dark presence exploded in a burst of energy, scattering into the night sky like stars. But even as the shadows dissipated, I felt a cold wave washing over me, creeping into my mind, a sense that this wasn't over, that the darkness still lurked just beyond the edges of the clearing, waiting for its chance to strike. "What now?" Lily gasped, trembling as she looked around. I could see the exhaustion shadowing Tom's face, but I didn't have an answer. "We keep moving," I said, steeling myself against the uncertainty. "We have to find Sarah. She's still out there." And just like that, we stepped back into the unknown, hearts heavy with the darkness that still lingered, every step echoing with the haunting promise that our journey wasn't nearly finished. As we plunged deeper into the woods, a thick silence settled around us, smothering every sound like a heavy blanket. I could feel the weight of my fear pressing down, every breath becoming harder to take. The glowing light we had summoned flickered in my mind like a distant memory, but a part of me was terrified it wouldn't return when we needed it most. "I can't shake this feeling," I whispered, glancing sideways at Lily and Tom. Their faces were drawn tight with tension, eyes darting toward every rustle and creak in the foliage around us. "It's like we're being watched." "Stop thinking like that," Tom said, trying to muster some bravado. Yet I could hear the tremor in his voice. "Maybe we just need a second to regroup, find our bearings." But as we walked, the shadows around us seemed to stretch longer, reaching out with invisible fingers that trailed along the backs of my shoulders like a cold breath. I shivered, brushing off the sensation, but knowing it wouldn't leave so easily. Just then, we stumbled into another clearing, but this one felt different. It was drenched in darkness, the ground littered with a strange, thick fog that clung to my ankles. Even more unsettling, a figure loomed at the center, shrouded in mist. My pulse quickened as I strained to see through the haze, fear rippling through me. "Is someone there?" I called, my voice surprisingly steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. The figure turned slowly, and I froze, breath hitching in my throat. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its face was a twisted mask, features long and stretched like a grotesque caricature. Hollow eyes, sunken deep, stared right at me, sparkling with malice. They seemed to know everything about me, every fear, every regret. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Lily's arm, but the thick fog wrapped tightly around us, resembling serpents coiling around our legs, dragging us toward the nightmarish figure. Tom grabbed a branch from the ground, swinging it wildly. "Get away from us!" he shouted, but it barely fazed the creature, which merely tilted its head in amusement. "Don't feed your fear," it rasped, the voice like dead leaves crunching underfoot. "You cannot escape what is coming." The fog thickened, swirling and suffocating, filling my lungs with a musty, ancient smell. I had to think, fighting against the terror clouding my mind. I remembered the light we'd summoned before. I needed to find it. But how? I won't let you take us, I yelled defiantly, trying to remember the warmth that had felt so bright earlier, the bond we shared. We're stronger together. But it felt like the darkness was laughing at me, feeding off my desperation. The figure took a step closer, revealing shadowy hands that elongated, reaching for us like claws, trying to pull us deeper into the nightmare. Suddenly, I felt a spark ignite somewhere inside me. I thought of Sarah, our friendship, the laughter we once shared. Think of the light, I shouted again, gripping Lily's hand tighter. We can do this. With every ounce of will I had left, I concentrated, envisioning the warmth spreading from my chest, reaching out like tendrils of fire. We need to fight back, I urged, squeezing Lily's hand, willing her to join me. The shadows flickered, momentarily startled by my surge of determination. Pathetic, the creature hissed, eyes narrowing. But in that instant, I saw it, a glimmer of warmth rising between us, breaking through the suffocating clouds. The chills shrank back just slightly, revealing a sliver of light shining through the dense fog. Together, Tom shouted as he joined our hands. The trembling warmth began to swirl, intertwining with the dim light forming around us, creating a barrier against the creeping terror. The creature lunged again, but we braced ourselves, pushing against the fear that threatened to pull us apart. Light, love, hope, I cried, my voice echoing into the deepening silence. The burst of energy was cataclysmic, an explosion of light that shattered the encroaching shadows, scattering them like dark smoke caught in a powerful wind. The figure howled in rage, the sound a mixture of fury and despair, echoing through the trees. As the fog retreated, the path before us was lit by our newfound glow, almost blinding in its brightness. Yet in the corner of my vision, shadows still lurked, eyeing us from the edges of the clearing, preparing for their return. Let's keep moving, I said, breathless, glancing at my friends, who seemed just as exhausted as I felt. We can't let it regroup. As we pressed on, the air grew heavier, and the whispers resumed, swirling around my mind like a storm. They were insidious, planting seeds of doubt, reminding me of every time I had failed, every moment I had felt small. I fought against it, focusing on the light that flickered in my heart, but the whispers turned to voices, echoing the memories I couldn't escape. You're weak, they taunted. You will always be alone in the dark. Shut up, I snapped, trying to drown them out. My heart pounded painfully in my chest, the memories resurfacing like old ghosts refusing to rest. Focus on the now, not the fear, Lily said beside me, her voice firm, reminding me of the strength we had found. As we walked, I could sense the shadows shifting again, fluid and ominous, waiting just out of sight. Each rustle of the leaves made my skin crawl, the forest feeling as if it were closing in on us, dimming with every step we took. Where's Sarah? I thought, the question nagging at my mind like a relentless itch. She must be out there somewhere. The darkness loomed as I caught sight of another clearing ahead. A sickening feeling settled in my stomach, but something compelled me forward. Maybe there was an answer waiting just beyond the trees, a clue that could lead us back to her. Taking a deep breath, we crossed the threshold into the next clearing, and the scene that unfolded shook me to my core. It was unlike anything I had seen before. Scattered across the ground lay remnants of long-forgotten rituals, bones bleached white by time, the air heavy with dampness and a pungent smell of decay. Symbols carved into the very earth pulsed faintly, glowing with the remnants of old energy, a warning of the darkness that resided here. And at the center, a stone altar stood like a sentinel, draped in vines that writhed lazily, almost alive, as if they were limbs reaching for something we couldn't see. I felt a chill race down my spine, the atmosphere thick and oppressive. Do you feel that? Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the aura surrounding us. We need to search the altar, I said, stepping hesitantly toward it. Drawn in like a moth to flame, the whispers swirled louder, drowning out my thoughts. It has to be connected to Sarah. But even as I approached, a shockwave of despair washed over me. The bones seemed to pulse with the very essence of fear, calling out to me, whispers rising to a deafening crescendo. "Stay away," they screamed, an echo of lost souls crying in unison. "You don't belong here." But I pushed the fear aside, determined to uncover the truth. As I reached out to touch the cool stone, a jolt of energy shot through me, and I was met not with comfort but with visions, Sarah's laughter. The moment we had come to this island, joy mingled with a sense of foreboding. Then it shifted. I saw her, lost amongst the trees, eyes wide with terror as shadows closed in. "Help me," she cried, and I felt a rush of anguish pierce my heart. "No, we're coming for you," I shouted desperately, feeling the connection pull violently as I struggled against it. "We can't stay here," Lily urged, pulling on my arm, but I shook her off, focusing on the vision, the urgency. I had to find her. In a blinding flash, the scene shifted again, and I was thrown into darkness, surrounded by the shadows that danced around me, their whispers wrapping around me like chains. "You should have turned back," they hissed, their voices a cacophony of despair. "Now you'll join us." Suddenly, I felt a pull, something deeper than fear, something that told me I was very much alone. Desperation clawed at me, drowning out every rational thought. I couldn't lose her. But then the shadows lunged, reaching into the core of my being, and I fell to the ground, knelt before the altar, feeling their cold embrace surround me. I had to get out. I had to find Sarah. With every ounce of will left in me, I closed my eyes, focusing once more on the light and love that still flickered between us. "We're not done yet," I shouted against the onslaught of darkness. Just then, I felt a surge of warmth wash over me, as if the energy from our earlier connection ignited within, pulsing, rising, breaking through the chains that bound me. In a desperate bid, I reached toward the altar, feeling the warmth spread from my fingertips as I pulled up the energy, summoning every drop from within me. The shadows pressed harder, relentless, but I focused on Sarah, on her laughter, on the memories we had built. And just as the darkness threatened to swallow me whole, a brilliant, blinding light erupted from me, illuminating the clearing and sending the shadows fleeing. Breathing heavily, I staggered back, feeling the pull of the earth beneath me. "We can't let this end here," I rasped, determinedly meeting Tom and Lily's eyes. "We're getting Sarah back." But deep within, a chilling certainty flickered. It was only the beginning. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The light still burned brightly around us, but the darkness clung to the edges of my vision, lurking patiently, as if waiting for its moment to strike again. I could still hear the whispers, a sinister melody that wrapped around my thoughts, creeping into my mind like vines choking a tree. "Where do we search next?" Lily asked, breaking the oppressive silence. Her voice trembled, and I could see anxiety written all over her face. "What if we're too late?" "We won't be," I replied, trying to instill confidence that I was unsure I felt. "We have to keep moving. She's out there." Every step felt heavy as we left the grim altar behind, the ground beneath us pulsing with a life of its own. The forest closed in tighter, branches stretching toward us like dark fingers. I glanced at Tom, who kept stealing anxious glances over his shoulder, as if the shadows were right at our heels. Then I saw it, a faint flicker of light deeper in the woods. My heart leaped, hope sparking like a freshly struck match. "This way," I called, urgency fueling my legs as I sprinted toward it. The others followed quickly, our footsteps stirring the fallen leaves, their whispers increasing in volume as I approached the source of the glow. As we neared, the soft light emerged, revealing itself to be a small clearing, the trees parting to showcase a strange sight. At the center stood an old well, the stones crumbled and weathered, revealing deep cracks from years of neglect. The glow radiated from within, pulsating with a steady rhythm, casting eerie shadows around us. There was something unsettling about the well. It beckoned in a way that felt familiar, but far too dangerous. "What is that?" Tom asked, his voice low and cautious as he peered over the edge. "Maybe it's a way to find Sarah," I said hesitantly. "But we should be careful." I approached the well, captivated by the light. My heart raced as I leaned over, peering down into the depths. The glow illuminated a pool of water that lay deep within, surprisingly clear and reflective like a mirror. Suddenly, a shiver ran down my spine as I caught something moving beneath the surface. Dark ripples, disturbing the perfect calm. "Guys, back up," I warned, my voice rising as I took a step back, forcing my eyes away from the well. But it was too late. A figure erupted from the water with a violent splash, water cascading around, droplets flying into the air like sharp crystals. I stumbled backward, instinctively reaching for Lily and Tom, who were frozen in shock. Emerging from the depths was a woman. I gasped as I recognized her. She looked just like Sarah, her features almost identical, but this woman was different. Her eyes glowed an unnatural hue, filled with a chilling emptiness. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo that seemed to seep into my very essence. "Help me escape. Is that really you?" I shouted, doubt swirling in my mind. My heart clenched as she reached a ghostly hand towards me, the glowing light flickering ominously. "Please, I can't stay here," the figure pleaded, gasping for breath as if the surface air was poisonous. "Don't trust her," Tom shouted, panic evident in his tone. "She's not Sarah. It's a trap." But I was entranced, caught between hope and suspicion. The figure's features wavered, and just for a moment, I saw a flash of my real friend's smile before darkness overtook it again. I felt myself stepping closer against my will, reaching out without thinking, pulled by a force I couldn't understand. Then suddenly, the air around us turned ice cold, and the whispers returned, louder than ever, wrapping around me like a shroud. "You're too close," they hissed, and the ground trembled beneath my feet, sending shivers up my spine. "Step back," Lily cried, yanking me away, just as black tendrils reached up from the depths of the well, trying to grab me. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, feeling the evil seep into my bones, clawing at my mind. With every ounce of strength, I tore my gaze away from the well. "We need to go. Now," I yelled, and we turned to run, the whispers growing ever more frantic behind us. But as we fled, I could hear the figure's voice, distorted and angry, echoing from the well. "You can't escape your fate. I'll find you." The darkness around us thickened, swirling with a life of its own. I could feel the shadows tightening like a noose, the very trees bending and leaning, as if trying to pull us back into their embrace. I glanced back, the well flickering behind us, almost taunting us with its glow. "Keep moving," I urged, pushing through the dense underbrush, my heart pounding harder with every step. Then, I felt it, a sudden force rising behind us. The shadows hissed, swirling into a vortex as if they were alive with anger. A cold breath shot down my back, sending chills across my entire body. "Faster!" Tom shouted, his breaths quick and panicked. The ground beneath us jolted, roots and branches shifting as the darkness writhed and twisted. Frantically, I glanced back, seeing the dark figure emerge from the well, cloaked in shadows, its hollow eyes burning like fiery coals. It loomed over us, taking form with a menacing advance, gaining speed. "Don't look back!" I screamed, desperation spilling from my lips as we sprinted deeper into the forest. But with every step, it felt like the world was collapsing in on itself. Trees bent low, blocking our escape, their branches reaching out to snatch us back. Every shadow seemed alive, grappling and clawing, fighting against our flight. Panic surged through me as I risked another glance. The figure surged closer, impossibly fast, its mouth twisted into a grin filled with darkness, a mouth that promised only despair. "We need to find shelter," Lily shouted desperately, and in that moment, I spotted a small cave hidden behind a cluster of brambles. "Over there," I pointed, the shadows closing in behind us like a tide. We dashed toward the entrance, scrambling into the cool embrace of the cave, just in time. Breathless and terrified, we collapsed inside, my heart pounding as I pressed my back against the wall. dark stone pressing against my skin. It was dark, the chill in the air biting at my flesh. For a moment, silence fell, like the world outside had paused, holding its breath. "We need to think," I whispered, feeling the urgency in my chest, desperately wishing for the light's warmth. What now? But the question lingered heavy in the air. The darkness outside throbbed, a pulsing anger vibrating through the cave. The whispers now replaced by distant howls of rage. "Do you think we lost it?" Tom murmured, his voice shaky, almost pleading for reassurance. "I don't know, but we can't let our guard down," I replied, glancing around the room. "We need a plan. We have to break this cycle, find a way to defeat whatever that thing is." As if in response, a gust of wind rushed into the cave, swirling and flickering the shadows all around us. I looked up, wide-eyed, feeling the air change, and suddenly, I was hit with the realization that we were not alone. "Did you hear that?" Lily whispered, her face pale as she looked at me. I nodded slowly, feeling the unease creep back in. A low, eerie growl echoed from the darkness, reverberating around us like thunder. Then, from the shadows ahead, more figures emerged, crawling and twisting, their faces obscured, eyes glowing with that chilling emptiness. I could feel my heart stutter, every instinct screaming to run. "Stay together," I shouted, stepping instinctively closer to my friends, squeezing their hands tightly. The figures advanced, moving with an unnatural grace, the air around us thickening with menace. "We have to find that light again," I breathed, desperately thinking of the warmth we had felt moments before. "We have to gather our energy." As the shadows pressed in closer, I closed my eyes, conjuring every flickering memory. Laughter, warmth, safety. Images danced in my mind, swirling with the hope that we could overcome this nightmare together. The figures paused, their growls echoing louder, but I couldn't give in to fear. "We can do this," I yelled, gripping Lily's and Tom's hands tighter. "Together." Just then, the shadows lunged forward, and I felt a rush of energy surge through me, igniting the very spark of light I had called forth before. It flared to life, illuminating the cave like a beacon, pushing back against the encroaching dark. "Fight it!" I screamed, my voice blending with the light, filling the cave with a relentless brightness. The figures shrieked, their forms twisting back, dissipating into wisps of shadow. I felt the pull of the light grow stronger, exploding forth from our hands in a brilliant display, casting warmth over my body, dispelling the darkness around us. But as the cave shimmered with newfound hope, I realized the shadows were only retreating for now. I could sense their anger, a storm brewing just beyond the glowing threshold. "Keep this flame alive," I urged my friends, fear still clawing at my heart. "We can't let it fade." As the light flickered wildly, I cast a glance at the darkness, knowing it would return. The battle was far from over, and the true danger still lurked just beyond that shimmering barrier. The whispers returned, louder now, howling with rage, promising that the darkness would come back to claim what was its own. "We'll be ready," I muttered, holding tight to my friends, drawing strength from their presence. Even in the face of all this fear and uncertainty, I couldn't shake the determination blooming within me. This fight was far from finished. I could feel it in my bones. The battle for Sarah and our very souls had only just begun. I held tight to the energy coursing through me, my heart racing as I felt the shadows swirl just beyond the light. It was a fragile peace, and I knew in my gut that the darkness hungered for our fear, waiting for the slightest hint of weakness to pounce. The walls of the cave seemed to pulse, closing in around us, and I could hear the whispers growing into a cacophony, a haunting agreement of dread. Suddenly, the cave felt smaller, stifling. The air grew thicker, pressing down upon us like a weight that I could almost feel suffocating me. I glanced at my friends, and I could see the panic mirrored in their eyes. "What do we do now?" Lily asked. Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "Stay strong," I replied, trying to sound confident, even as fear twisted my stomach. We have to hold the light until we can figure something out. With that, I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the energy that connected us. I could feel warmth radiate from our clasped hands, but the shadows continued to stir, reaching for us with dark tendrils that slithered like snakes against the stone walls. My heart raced as I opened my eyes again, feeling the shadows pressing ever closer. Then something caught my attention, a movement shifting just past the glow, something darting just out of view. I squinted into the darkness, straining to see. Was it a trick of the light, or was there something lurking there? "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice shaking, hoping it hadn't just been my imagination. Tom nodded slowly, his expression tense. "Yeah, I saw it too. It looked like a face." A chill swept through me, and I glanced nervously at the shadows. I could feel the dark energy swirling around us, rhythmically undulating, echoing a pulse that matched my own racing heart. I fought to stay focused, the memories of Sarah fueling my determination. "We can't let them win," I said firmly, but doubt nagged at the edges of my mind. Then, the whispering grew into urgent, hissing voices that filled the cave. "Surrender to us. You can't hide from the truth," they chanted, their tones unnervingly melodic, yet laced with malice. "Shut up," I screamed, and that only seemed to make the whispers louder, swirling around my head like a storm. I felt the ground shake, and a shadowy figure emerged, taller and more menacing than the ones before. It was wispy, dark, seemingly made from the very nightmares we feared. "Why do you resist?" it crooned, its voice like a serpent slithering through the air. "Join us. We can show you the way." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to take a step back, but the figure advanced, its form shifting, revealing glimpses of my own memories, the laughter, the light, the love we had shared before this horror descended. It twisted those memories, contorting them into something grotesque. Panic surged through me. "That's not real," I shouted, meeting its ghastly gaze. "You're just using our fear against us." But the words felt weak in the overwhelming presence of dread, the shadows clawing at the edges of my resolve. "Do you see now?" the figure taunted, its eyes gleaming with a predatory joy. "You will never escape this darkness. It is a part of you now." Before I could respond, the ground shook violently, rocks crumbling around us, and the light flickered ominously. I felt the warmth from our connection begin to wane, the shadows pressing in on us, their intentions dark and menacing. "Lily Tom," I cried, "hold on to me. We can't let it take us." As we huddled tightly, the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, the shadows swirling violently, pulling at the very fabric of our bond. I felt the energy flickering, dimming as the darkness consumed everything around us. I was terrified we would be swept away into the void, until I remembered Sarah. It felt like a spark igniting in the depths of my fear. "We're not alone," I shouted desperately, focusing on the bond we shared. "We have to fight for her." The glow intensified momentarily, illuminating the cave with a dazzling light that pushed back against the encroaching darkness. I could see the shadows recoiling, writhing in defiance, anger rolling off them in waves. But that respite was fleeting, the shadows resuming their advance with a vengeance. "You cannot protect her," they hissed, a chorus of tortured voices. "You've already lost." I could see the flicker of hope dying around us, shadows creeping in once more like insidious tendrils, suffocating our resolve. That was when I felt something shift again, something slithering closer. The darkness began to take form, coalescing into a much larger figure, its face taking shape from the nightmares I had buried deep down. And for the first time, I felt fear gripping my heart in a cold embrace. It bore an uncanny resemblance to me, mocking my very existence. "Embrace who you truly are," it beckoned, its voice a chilling echo of my own, reverberating as if it had risen from the depths of my worst fears. "Let the darkness free you." I gritted my teeth, fighting back a growing sense of despair. "I won't. You're not real," I shouted, but doubt crept in. "Join us," the figure urged again, stepping closer, emanating an aura of despair that seemed to seep into my skin. The shadows danced around me, and I nearly lost my grip on the light swirling between us, the connection fading like a dying ember. "Push back," I cried, urging my friends as fear threatened to overwhelm us. "We have the power, together." But as I shouted those words, a sharp jolt of cold pierced through me, a rush of icy air that stole the breath from my lungs. I staggered back, gasping, as the clattering echoes of claws scraping against stone filled my ears. Something was coming from the deep darkness, slithering closer. It was a monstrous shape, shadows pooling on the ground around it as eyes glimmered with an ominous hunger. I felt my heart hammering in my chest, adrenaline surging through my veins. "What is that?" I shouted, dread twisting in my stomach. Then, suddenly, it lunged, a massive dark creature with limbs that seemed prepared to envelop us whole. There was no escaping this time. In a split second, all rational thought vanished, replaced by primal fear. "Run!" I yelled, turning back toward the entrance of the cave, pushing my friends ahead of me, the light flickering uncertainly as we scrambled to get away. "Faster!" I urged, hearing the creature roar behind us, a sound that resonated deep within the earth, filled with ancient malice that stung my ears. Each step became a race against time, the shadows clawing at our heels, seeking to steal us away. Just as I felt the dark, cold breath of the creature mere inches from my back, we broke free of the cave, tumbling into the open air. But the forest had changed, the landscape warped by the horrors within. The trees twisted like skeletal hands reaching out to us. The branches crackled with life, whispering lies and despair. "Where do we go?" Tom gasped, panting heavily, glancing around wildly. "Anywhere but here," I hissed, my heart pounding as I felt the shadows creeping closer again, felt the creature behind us. Its presence was suffocating, like a storm ready to unleash its fury on us. In a moment of clarity, I spotted a small path barely visible in the underbrush, leading deeper into the woods. Maybe if we can get to the river, it could wash away the darkness. With that thought in mind, we bolted down the narrow path, branches clawing at my skin, the whispers following close behind, shrieking my name. The air felt heavy with dread, the chill creeping down my spine like a ghostly caress. The shadows chased us relentlessly, their whispers drowning in the noise of our panic. As I pushed forward, I could almost feel the cold gaze of the creature burning into my back, its sinister breath wrapping around me like a noose. I had to keep moving, to protect what was left of us, our hope, our fight. But as we raced through the thick forest, it felt like the trees themselves were trying to prevent our escape. Branches snapped and splintered, roots coiling up to trip us, dragging us back toward the grip of darkness. "Don't stop! Don't look back!" I screamed, trying to drown out the fear creeping in again. Then, just as it felt like we might collapse under the weight of it all, we broke through a thicket and found ourselves at the edge of a churning river. The water glinted under the dim light, reflecting the moon above as if it beckoned us closer. "Go!" I shouted, leaping forward, feeling the rush of the current as it crashed against the rocks. We had to get in. With one final glance back, I saw it. The terrifying figure standing at the forest's edge, a looming shadow that swallowed the light. The distorted face of darkness watched us with relentless desire, a promise that it would return, driving its claws deeper into my soul. "Jump!" I yelled, feeling the power of the water surge up around us as we dove into the river. Coldness enveloped me, and I fought against the currents, desperate to break free. As the water swirled around, I could sense the shadows lingering just above the surface, their whispers muffled but still threatening to drag us under. I focused on the flickering light within me, urging it to fight against the cold grip of despair. I needed to find Sarah. I had to believe she was still out there, waiting for us. The current pulled me further away, carrying us downstream. It felt like a battle against the tide, each stroke heavy as I fought to stay afloat, the weight of fear pressing down upon me. But the river surged with life, and I felt its strength wrap around me, reinforcing my resolve. We will not let this end, I thought fiercely as I swam harder, determined to break free from the darkness for good. as my friends struggled alongside me against the relentless pull. I could feel the shadows beginning to retreat. They howled in frustration, their cries echoing above the rushing water like distant thunder. "Keep going," I shouted, the roar of the river swallowing my voice. But I pushed on, adrenaline coursing through me. We couldn't give up now, not when we were so close to finding a way out. As we swam harder, something glinted in the water just ahead. A small island emerged, a sanctuary of safety amidst the chaos. The shadows splashed against the banks of the river, angry and desperate, clawing at the edge. But they couldn't follow us here. With one last effort, I reached the shore and collapsed onto the wet sand, breathing heavily, heart pounding. My friends followed closely behind, gasping for air in a mix of relief and terror still tugging at us. We lay there for a moment, the moonlight filtering through the trees, illuminating the horrors we had narrowly escaped. But deep inside, a knot of dread lingered. I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. "We have to keep moving," I said finally, pushing myself up from the ground. "The shadows will find us again." Lily and Tom nodded, their faces pale and drawn. "But where do we go?" Tom whispered, searching the darkness around us. I looked around, scanning the horizon, seeking any sign of hope. Then it hit me, a flicker in the distance, a faint glow shining from between a cluster of ancient trees, almost like a beacon calling us forward. "Over there," I exclaimed, pointing into the dark thicket ahead. "That light, it has to mean something." And without a moment's hesitation, we took off again, racing toward the glow, desperation mingling with hope as I cast one last glance behind us. The shadows pulsed ominously at the riverbank, but we were determined to move forward. There was still a chance, still a fight left in us, and I felt the flickers of light igniting in my heart, urging me to believe that we could still save Sarah. As we drew closer to the mysterious light, I could feel the air shift around us. The whispers quieted, replaced by an eerie silence, the kind that sent shivers crawling down my spine. "What if it's a trap?" Lily cautioned, but fear straightened my resolve. "Whatever it is, we have to face it together," I said. With that, we stepped into the glow, feeling our fears meld with bravery, ready. As I stepped into the light, an uncomfortable warmth washed over me, a stark contrast to the cold dread that lingered in my bones. The glow pulsed softly, inviting yet unnerving. It illuminated a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, twisted like gnarled fingers reaching into the sky. The moment felt surreal, almost like stepping into a different realm, and I could hardly breathe, waiting for the next horror to unfold. "What is this place?" Tom whispered behind me, his voice breaking the heavy silence that enveloped us. I could feel our breath synchronizing, a living, anxious rhythm, each heartbeat drumming louder in the stillness. The air felt thick, pregnant with expectation. I searched for words, but they slipped through my fingers like grains of sand, an inexplicable terror coiling in my gut, whispering that we may be walking into a trap. The light grew brighter, swirling around me, revealing worn stones laid in a circular pattern at the center of the clearing. Eerie sim. Bowls etched into the rocks caught my eye, glowing as if pulsing with their own heartbeat. I took a cautious step forward, curiosity wrestling with fear. "I think this is some kind of altar," I murmured, but the thought alone twisted my stomach. Then, without warning, the shadows that had lingered just outside the glow erupted, swirling violently as if they were alive. Dark shapes twisted among themselves, forming vague, menacing figures that stepped from the periphery like a tidal wave of darkness crashing against the fragile light. A low growl reverberated through the air, and I felt it resonate within my very core, as though it were aiming directly for the fear etched into my soul. "We can't let it take us," I shouted, but my voice felt small against the encroaching frenzy. As the shadows converged, I felt an icy hand wrap around my heart, squeezing. Around me, the symbols on the stones flickered wildly, as if protesting something foul, but also beckoning us closer. "Stay together," I yelled, grabbing my friend's hands again, anchoring our spirits in this darkness. The shadows screamed, their mouths stretching wide, not human, but filled with an abyssal hunger that twisted my stomach. "Join us, and we can grant you power," they chanted, their voices a haunting melody of despair and false promises. I looked at Tom and Lily, and I saw terror mirrored in their eyes. "They're lying," I yelled defiantly, struggling to push through the wall of dread that threatened to swallow me whole. "We fight for each other." As if fueled by my words, the light surrounding us pulsed stronger, growing bolder against the shadows. Yet, the dark figures pressed in, relentless in their pursuit. I could feel them inching closer, a suffocating presence, seeking to smother the flickers of hope we held on to. Then, I noticed a flicker in the center of the altar. It reached out to me, an energy that demanded to be set free. "Don't let it get to us," I shouted, trying to drown out the rising chaos around me. The shadows screamed louder, their twisted faces contorting in rage as they sensed our defiance. "What are you doing?" Lily cried, her voice laced with panic as I knelt before the stones, feeling drawn to them as if they were a magnet, and I was helplessly caught in their pull. Maybe this is the key, I thought, desperately recalling the warmth that had enveloped us moments before. I pressed my palms against the smooth, cool surface of the altar. We can channel the light through us. With that conviction, I closed my eyes tightly, attempting to gather every ounce of strength I could muster, calling forth the light within me like a surge of raw electricity. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. But then, it was as if the very fabric of the air shifted, the shadows halting abruptly. Sensing the changing tide, a wave of warmth flowed through me, igniting memories of laughter, joy, and love, all the bonds we held dear. I opened my eyes, feeling the glow swell and envelop my entire being, radiating like a lighthouse in the stormy night. "Now," I yelled, turning to Tom and Lily. "We fight back." Together, we pressed our hands against the altar, channeling the pulsing light through our connections, sending a brilliant beam shooting straight into the roiling mass of darkness before us. The shadows howled in fury, twisting and writhing as if they were made of smoke, beginning to dissolve into vapor under the intense light. Just as it seemed the light would extinguish the shadows entirely, a deafening roar erupted, an eerie cacophony that pierced through my resolve. I felt a sharp tug at my essence, an overwhelming need to give in to despair. The shadows surged, driven by a vengeful fury, grasping to snuff out our light. "They cannot win," I shouted, fiercely praying to the light, to Sarah, and everything good. My heart pounded, the shadows undulating violently against the glow. The altar's symbols began to spark, releasing tendrils of radiant energy that pulsed with every heartbeat. "Push harder," I screamed, feeling the essence of hope guide my hands, pulsing in tune with the shadows' thrumming rhythm. Then, one final cry escaped my lips, a primal declaration of light. "This ends now." With renewed determination, I focused every last ounce of energy into the altar. The release was explosive, throwing a shockwave of light cresting over everything. The roar of shadows devolved into panicked shrieks as they were engulfed in a torrent of brilliance, the dark figures screaming as they dissipated into nothingness, drawn into a blinding whirlpool of overwhelming light. In an instant, the clearing was silent, the shadows extinguished, returned to the nothingness from which they came. I collapsed to my knees, panting heavily, a wave of exhaustion crashing over me. Tom and Lily joined me, our hands still linked, staring wide-eyed at the remnants of the altar. But then I looked deeper into the clearing. The light began to settle. Shapes emerged from the light, familiar forms shimmering into clarity. With a gasping breath, I recognized it was Sarah, standing before us, bathed in warmth. "You did it," she whispered, her voice gentle like a song, and I felt tears sting my eyes, a mix of relief and overwhelming joy. "You fought for me." But just as happiness crashed against despair, a low rumble grumbled through the ground, shaking me to my core. The shadows lingered just beyond the edge of the clearing, furious and undeterred. They wouldn't rest. They were waiting for the moment when we let down our guard. "Are you ready?" I whispered, bracing myself for whatever came next. "We'll face it together," Tom and Lily replied, echoing our bond in the warmth surrounding us. And with Sarah finally back, we were stronger than before. The shadows would come again, I was sure, whispering deceitful promises of power, seeking entry into our lives once more. But we had faced them once with light. Together, we were ready to fight again. And as I gripped my friend's hands tighter, we prepared for whatever awaited us beyond the clearing, knowing that as long as we had each other, we could reclaim our hope from the darkness, no matter how many times it returned, because together, we would light the way through any nightmare.